Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody, to our Williamsport City Council meeting. It's Thursday, September 14th, 2023. We're in Trade and Transit 2. Please rise for the invocation by Councilman Eric Biter, followed by our flag salute.
Dear Lord, we pray for your wisdom as always. Help us satisfy the needs of our community during this meeting. Strengthen us as we make tough decisions. And please guide us so that this meeting can be productive. Let us be effective and decisive. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item 3, approval of city council meeting minutes from August 29th, 2023 and August 31st, 2023. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the minutes we're approving? Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 3.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mr. Biter.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz. Yes. Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Item 4, limited courtesy of the floor. We've had no requests at the last minute that I'm aware of. Nothing from beforehand, Mrs. Frank.
No, nothing.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We're going to jump around just a bit. We're going to move to item 10, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing agreement between Williamsport Bureau of Police and Redca Behavior Services for correspondence program.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Assistant Chief Bolt. Welcome, sir.
Council President Yoder, members of council, good evening. What you have before you is a resolution authorizing an agreement between the Williamsport Bureau of Police and Redca Behavioral Services. This agreement will be for RBS to provide 2 part-time licensed mental health professionals that will co-respond with officers to calls in which persons may be suffering from a mental or behavioral health crisis. As you guys know, we respond to over 12,000 calls a year. There's been a visible rise in calls and law enforcement encounters with citizens who suffer from mental illness or co-occurring mental illness and substance abuse. And statistically, 1 out of 10 of every police encounters involve persons with serious mental illness. So the goal of this program is going to be to incorporate a quicker mental health co-response, which will improve experiences and outcomes. Persons suffering a mental health crisis by providing de-escalation, diversion from the criminal justice system, and connection to the appropriate mental health services. RBS will provide training to our officers as well, giving them tools on how to identify and respond to persons suffering from mental and behavioral health emergencies. And this program will be funded by the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency grant that we were awarded earlier this year. This was also discussed in Public Safety Committee earlier this week. If you have any questions, we also have Redca Behavioral Services here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Assistant Chief Bolt, Reviewed in Public Safety, Mr. Mackey.
That it was. Most of our conversation revolved around what this response might look like. We got to know the folks from Redca a little bit. It is a local company. You'll have to remind me again where you're located. I don't exactly remember, but
we're in Williamsport. We're at 320 East 3rd.
there you go. So yeah, Chief Bolt said it pretty well. I do have one follow-up question, but I'll open up the floor first to other members of public safety. So.
Any comments or questions outside of some follow-up questions for Mr. Mackey?
No.
Everything that I
Everything
had
was
questions on, we had already discussed, or Assistant Chief Bolt had already answered for me. So it's funding and location of the service provider. So.
Mr. Mackey.
Councilwoman Katz, no, you're good.
No,
No.
it was explained to us thoroughly at the committee meeting, and as you have said, this is really important anymore, that it's well needed on both sides.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think we're all just very happy. Plus, we're happy that this is a new company and they're also in the city. So thank you very much.
Chief Bolt, if you could just remind me, how long is the duration of this grant? Can you remind me again?
The grant ends the end of 2024, so we have this year and next year to hopefully hit our goals and
Right.
show some promise through this program.
Okay, and I mean, one of the major talking points of the Public Safety Committee meeting was Assistant Chief Bolt, but maybe you could just for the public record, kind of walk us through what a response might look like. I mean, if you notice here in the agreement, there is mileage accounted for as
Correct.
part of the compensation. This is going to be a work in progress, and I won't speak for Assistant Chief Bolt, but there could be a situation where one of these responders actually goes to a call with the police with an officer in their vehicle. But I'll let Chief Bolt kind of talk about what a response might look like. So
Certainly. So when we are dispatched to a call, we don't always know what we may encounter. We don't know always kind of the nuances of who we're dealing with or any of the circumstances surrounding it. If we're fortunate enough to have from the dispatch level at County Communications inform us that we're going into a situation in which we may have somebody who's under a mental health crisis, we can then hopefully have the co-responder go to the scene with us, with an officer after we deem it clear or safe. And then they can be on the scene as we're making contact with the individual and hopefully evaluate and give them the proper care, for lack of a better term, to try and get them the best service that we can for whatever it is that they're in crisis for. If it is not going to be co-responding with an officer directly there, we may have that officer do some level of crisis intervention, and then we can then have the co-responder as a follow-up or referral after the fact. So there are several different potential ways that we can respond to this. And again, with each incident being a little bit different, it's going to evolve and we're going to have to tweak it to the best fit for our department and for the community.
And do you ever envision a scenario where one of these mental health crisis responders would stay back or be there with a person when there isn't police presence? I mean, there could be a scenario where, okay, we've pretty much determined that this person is not going to be violent. They're not going to be dangerous. They still need some help, some counseling, whatever it might be. And there's other calls that need police response. Is there any scenario where you see?
I mean, that could be a scenario. I mean, it depends on the comfort level of the situation, the comfort level of our co-responder. It could be that they're co-responding for something that could be a juvenile. And it could just be something simple that never necessarily needed a law enforcement officer there. And in that unfrequent occurrence, then I could see that they may stay there for a little bit, but more than I mean, we're normally going to be there to provide safety and security for that co-responder at any scene that the police are dispatched to.
And I know we talked about the potential for body armor. Another question I had was, what about a radio? Will there be any, will these folks carry radios? Is that something that we want to maybe think about?
I don't know if that's going to be necessary. We consider it, but we'd be able to get in touch with them through phones.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it for me, really. I mean, if the it's Meredith, is that Miranda? Sorry. And I apologize. I don't, Elena. Yeah. Is there anything that you ladies would like to add to this and maybe talk about what your role is going to be as far as hiring these people, or it's up to you. I just want to give you the opportunity to say something. You did show up tonight, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. We did just post the job post last weekend, and we've already had a few applicants. Nobody that I've been completely excited about yet, but we've got some applicants in, which is really good for just posting it 3 or 4 days ago. And the model that we are thinking about starting with would be with a co-response team where there may be an assigned couple officers so that we cover the safety of everybody involved. And the point at which somebody from RBS would be by themselves would more likely be at a follow-up than at a immediate incident.
I mean, that's all I have. I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. Any other comments or questions on the item? Mr. Allison?
Yeah, first I want to thank Chief Snyder, Assistant Chief Bolt, and Mayor Slaughter for being a proactive administration, and this is a very important area of policing and taking care of our community. So thank you for that. And I was wondering a little, you shared a little bit about the mechanism, how this is going to work. Who's going to process the information? I guess I have two questions. Who makes the call, whether there's a team together with the police that goes, or, and the second one is the 911 group, are they included in this? And to your knowledge, are they trained in this area of having different kinds of responses to emergencies?
So currently, we're going to train our officers how to identify persons that are in crisis. That's also going to be part of their responsibilities, is that all of our officers, hopefully by the time we're done with this, all of our officers themselves will all be trained mental health professionals to a certain extent. They're going to be trained in how to deal with mental health crises. So they should be, by the time that we're hopefully through this program, be able to easily identify when somebody is in a mental health or behavioral health crisis. As for county communications, we're also going to work with them to try and to receive some training as well for dispatching these.
Okay. Yeah, I think and I'm glad you're doing it that way. I think it's important to have anybody that's involved in this chain of events, whenever there's a call made, to be
I think Chief
helpful
Snyder might also have a word.
as possible.
Yeah, one thing just to add on to, sir, is, with this program, the idea behind it is to get the department in a position where we don't need them. So
Yeah.
we joke about it a little bit. They're going to get us here and get us established. But the idea is, if we continue this on, it's going to get to a point where the department can continue itself
Okay.
and do it. So one of the things too, is I don't want to lose focus on either, is that the code response initiative is going to it's going to free up other officers. Because right now, when we're doing an intervention or we're dealing with a mental health crisis, it's taking numerous hours to remedy that situation
Mhm.
with all the entities that are in place. So what this will allow us to do is establish that code response team that would be able to respond to that particular incident. And it's going to free up our other officers to keep continuing and providing a service to the communities. So, right now with a couple mechanisms in place, I don't want to talk about too many other
Right.
institutions and whatnot, but we're just trying to come up with a way to better resolve these issues and try to get them the help that is needed quicker and more efficiently. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from members of council? Okay. Cool. Very good. Here you see none, Mrs. Franklin, to vote then.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you both. And welcome aboard to our partners here. Is there anybody online? Chris, we'll have to ask you. I don't think there's anybody else here. Okay. Let's jump to item 9, Mrs. Frank, or excuse me, item 8.
Resolution authorizing agreement between the Williamsport and between the city of Williamsport and Hummer Turf Grass Systems.
This will be removing it from the table. Is there a motion and a second to remove from the table?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. We'll have to vote to remove it from the table, but before we vote, this is something that we've had probably a lot of individual conversations on over the past couple of weeks, including some dialogue with Major League Baseball. Others are welcome to chime in here for sure, but this is I don't know how I would phrase it. A little bit of a tough spot to be in, I would say, to vote on this. So we're being asked to participate in upgrading the field with Act 13 money, which certainly is not general fund revenue, but nonetheless something that we use to kind of offload the tax burden to our citizens out of the general fund. I've only had a couple weeks to kind of look through this. I think there's a number of just different opinions, but we tabled this to gather some more information in an effort to, I think, see if this is something that made sense. I'll let others chime in here before we vote. And just to be clear, this is just a vote to take it off the table. If it does not come off the table, it just fails. Okay. And there's no other vote on that. I can't sit here and say that I'm comfortable taking this off the table. I don't know that this is a good idea. With all due respect to Major League Baseball, I think the classic is a great thing. I think we all want to see it continue. For me, generally, I'm just personally not comfortable going outside the confines of our contract that we have with them. And this is outside of those confines. And I would rather see us update, renegotiate our contract. If this is something that there's a desire of MLB to work with us on moving forward, I'd like to see it codified in the contract in some way, shape, or form and negotiate through that rather than doing this first and negotiating after. That's just my personal perspective. But others are more than welcome to share and then join in on the dialogue before we vote to remove from the table. Mrs. Katz.
Yes, I'd like to take a page out of the mayor's script. He often says, we don't know what we're going to be able to do with the AG, the Attorney General, and their investigation. We don't know whether we're going to wind up paying thousands of millions of dollars with what they come up with their reports. And with the money that MLB is asking, this money should really be for our taxpayers. Our taxpayers are more interested in having their potholes filled. And I think that's what we have to be careful of. And to me, you know, it's, I agree with you, Adam, that I think we've all been very uncomfortable with this. And I don't understand why this was done 3 weeks ago. This was dumped on us 3 weeks ago. And this was not budgeted. It was not even put in our budget. And there was nothing that any of us knew about this. So, you know, I feel very uncomfortable with this. And that's what I have to say at this point.
Appreciate it, Mrs. Katz. The one thing I will add, I believe this was brought forward early in the summer to try to get that moving on the administration's part. That I went back and looked, that was not communicated to me. If you did that, Derek, I missed it, but I did not see that. We probably could have, I think, worked through a number of questions that we had if we were able to have that dialogue, I think, early in the summer rather than now. You know, my encouragement would be when we run into these situations in the future, kind of what we ran into, I think, with Maynard Street, right? On something so big like this that might make for a bit of a pickle of a decision, get us involved earlier, right? It is a tough spot.
I was gonna say, yeah, I didn't have any details early in the summer. So to provide to council, when I have stuff, I bring it forward. So they put it out there and we worked through it. Really, when they got here in August is when I had the actual details. So as soon as I had the information is when I brought it to you. As far as what it was going to look like, co-stars, et cetera, I didn't know any of that. So, but if I have prudent information, I'll provide it as soon as and as quickly as I can. That's what we did.
Appreciate that. Any other comments before we vote on removing from the table? Mr. Allison.
I think this, the MLB Classic and everything surrounding it and its placement within the context of the Little League Baseball World Series. I think the entirety of that is a unique event that happens nowhere else in the country. I think Major League Baseball is a big part of that. I understand the hesitation to commit that amount of money. But I think that puts us, if you're talking about negotiating in the future, I think that offers up an opportunity to us to be in a strong position. I think the adage of not cutting off your nose to spite your face, that's not a perfect analogy, but I fear doing that could have repercussions far beyond what we know or can consider. I think the Major League Baseball event is important to the city. We get free advertisement nationally and internationally for our city. And I think there's a Major League Baseball goes out of their way to have two major league teams come to this city and play a game that counts when in August, when teams are gearing up for the postseason, they're making a sacrifice in their schedule to come here. And the players not only play the game, but they interact with our community, with Little League. I just see it in a different light. And having lived in Williamsport all my life and knowing the importance of baseball to this community, it is in the DNA of this city. And I see all the momentum we're making. We've upgraded our recreational facilities, and part of those are the ball fields. We have a lot of momentum going forward, and I'd hate to see something like this derail if we don't go through with it. Maybe there won't be any, but I'm not willing to take that risk. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Any other, Mr. Mackey?
Yeah, I think just kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, Councilman Yoder, and maybe some to kind of some of your points too, Randy. My no vote tonight is not in any way a dig or a shot at Major League Baseball. It's not. I really do appreciate everything that Major League Baseball has done in the last. We've done this 5 times, 6 times now,
Something like that.
if we take out the COVID years. But again, Councilman Yoder, to your point is, the timing on this was not great. I mean, when we're talking about this kind of money, we need more time to figure out where this kind of money may come from. That's one of our primary roles here, is to make sure that we're spending the taxpayers' money in the best way possible. And I think that I'm confident that we have developed a really good relationship with Major League Baseball. And I don't see any reason why that can't continue. And I don't see any reason why this work, the actual work on the field, can't get started so that it meets the timelines necessary to have the Yankees and the Tigers play here next year. And also allows us to have a little more time to discuss these things, to look at the contract, to figure out, okay, where are we comfortable taking some money from to put towards it. So I think for all of those reasons, that's why I personally am not comfortable voting for this tonight in a positive manner. But like I said, I want to believe that we've developed a relationship strong enough to not take any of this personally and to say, we all want this game to move forward and to continue to come to the city of Williamsport. We just need to maybe all of us can do a little bit better job communicating and figuring out how exactly we want this to, what we want this to look like in the future. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Mr. Pelisi.
Thank you. No, well said. There's an old saying that says lack of planning on their part does not constitute an emergency on mine. Just to piggyback off of what everybody else has said. I wish that MLB had provided us with specifics on what was going to happen earlier, so we had time to make responsible decision regarding this. To Councilman Yoder and Mackey's point, it is a lot of money. We have a responsibility to our taxpayers to make sure that we are looking out for their best interest. Also, you know, I do think that we are developing a good relationship with Major League Baseball. This is an event that happens nowhere else in arguably the world. And it's a very special event. I would like to see it continue. But also, you know, we have that responsibility to make sure that we are moving forward responsibly and looking out for the best interests of our residents ultimately, you know. And to Councilman Allison's point, it does provide it provides some spotlight on Williamsport. It gives us a little bit there. But you know, that's not paying the bills. I would argue some people come in and stay in the hotels. That's great. That doesn't help Williamsport's bottom line. They come and come to our restaurants. That's great. We love the support. We have great restaurants here. I would say the best restaurants in the world. But again, that doesn't help Williamsport's bottom line. That's not paying our taxes. So with that, I don't feel comfortable taking this off the table right now until we are able to have a much more in-depth discussion with MLB regarding the city's role in this and possibly some other organizations that benefit from this. We can't continue to foot the bill for everything. So I don't feel comfortable moving forward with this at this point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Pelisi. Any other final comments, questions? Mr. Biter?
Just to clarify for everybody in the room and also for myself, the part in the contract that we're referring to for the public's benefit is Article 1 in lease requirements, Section 2. It says facility improvements / capital improvements. And it's a very brief one sentence line that says during the term, MLB will be responsible for the cost of its work on Bowman Field, including capital improvements and temporary improvements, if any, which I would agree. That's all where the other members of council had the issue from, where the issue stems from, excuse me. I too have issue with that they're coming to us with this ask right now, but I'm looking at it from also the perspective of Councilman Allison, where we do have a world-class facility right in our backyard that a lot of local teams, whether it be Penn College and Lycoming College last season, high school teams and PIAA do get a benefit from. What I would urge other council members to look at as well, should Major League Baseball decide that they choose not to renew any kind of contract and decide not to play this game any farther, if we do invest these monies today, we have a world-class facility for the next 10 to 15 years
if the maintenance crews are able to maintain that going forward. So again, not cutting off our nose to spite our face is some good advice. Again, I'm not comfortable whatsoever in the ask in this current agreement, but I am comfortable in saying that I think it is short-sighted to completely negate the fact that this is something that is beneficial to us. Agree with Councilman Pelisi and Councilman Biter, or excuse me, Councilman Mackey, that third person, that they, it is not, the game itself is not a revenue boon for the city, because it is a private event. I will agree with that completely. But that's part of what makes that special, because it is the 20 teams this year for Little League that got to be there. We had other local Little Leagues that were given tickets to be there, and they got to enjoy that game. Probably a once in a lifetime experience to go see a Major League Baseball game. And how many times can we say that we've had numerous presidents and vice presidents visit our town because of that? So I would, again, urge all of council, along with the sentiments that Councilman Allison had said, please let's not be too short-sighted. But also I would like to add that I would hope that Major League Baseball is willing to play ball in the future as we look at this contract more thoroughly and go forward and find ways that we can benefit from it. Here. Ms. Mealy.
So I don't know that I've ever heard this much discussion before we vote to remove something from the table, but as long as we're going there. Like everyone, I suspect that I am torn on this issue. I tend to wind up perhaps agreeing a little bit more with Randy and Eric, that who I believe are agreeing, but I'm not quite certain I was getting you there, Eric.
I'm very good at
that. I understand that this field will continue to have some utility for the city of Williamsport moving forward. I think the time frame for the field is actually more like 7 years, was our understanding from the groundskeepers, correct? So we would continue to have a field that was playable for 7 years, and then potentially would need to be replaced. We do have a good track record of stretching things a little further than that, so we might be able to say that we could go for a decade. I think perhaps my concern is I know that when we initially began our relationship with MLB, we had a field in need of replacement. I know that we had really taken the field to the outer limits of its usability, and that we were fortunate to get a new field when we did. That said, and I know that we would be putting money into replacing the field and maintaining the field if MLB weren't here. However, we wouldn't be putting this much money into this kind of a field without MLB. And I feel as though there's a bit of a financial disparity there. I feel as though the even Steven split is not necessarily a fair approach, given that the city and its partners in the ball field, with the exception of MLB, don't require that level of playable surface. But I'm willing to listen to discussion on all sides of the subject. I am afraid that we hinder our negotiating ability on the contract moving forward if we agree to this. If we agree to this field, to putting this much money into the field at this point. And I'm afraid that we do that because once we have invested so much in a new field, I think we are somewhat more pressured into moving forward with an agreement with MLB, regardless of whether or not it suits our needs. None of that is to say, obviously the classic, I think, has been a wonderful thing for the city, even if it's not necessarily an economic driver for the city on the surface of it. The visibility that we get, and obviously the really positive experiences that it's generating for ball players and small children of all stripes here in the area is pretty cool. And I do believe that livability and is being increased by that game in the city to a certain extent, and if there's something about that makes it worthwhile. But I am not you know, we have invested a ton of money in that stadium. And I have been, I have struggled with all of it from the beginning of my time on council. And I think this is something that I'm still really struggling with in terms of a dollar amount, not so much at the idea that we would contribute to the field, but at the idea that we would contribute quite this much money. So I'm sorry, that was not a very definitive statement, but that's how I feel.
I think a lot of us feel that way.
Yeah.
Any other
Again,
comments or?
sorry, again, just to be clear, my
Yeah.
my no vote is more so directed at the timing.
Hmm.
Right. And I really do urge Major League Baseball to start this work as soon as
Mhm.
possible so that this game gets played and future games get played. And that will also allow us more time, as I said, to talk about these kind of things and figure out. And I agree with Miss Mealy.
Mhm.
We should share some financial burden in this endeavor, because yes, we do get benefit from this. I don't deny that.
Mhm.
Again, you know, I think, like I said, I think we have a good relationship. So let's, on some good faith, let's keep moving forward. Let's get this work started so that the field's ready to go, and then allows all of us to kind of take a deep breath and continue to talk about this. So, you know, and if my eyes don't deceive me, I happened to swing past the park earlier tonight, and there's some heavy equipment there. So it sounds like we're ready to go. So let's get ready and let's do this. So.
Ms. Mealy, then Ms. Katz.
So I think the one pressing question is then, can the work proceed on the field? I mean, this agreement obviously obligates us to sharing the funds, but can the work proceed without some level of agreement to allow work to proceed on the field?
Believe so. I think they've done that before. If you
Yeah,
look at
I don't remember seeing any. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
This is purely, Norm, is there any?
Or if you
reason they
look, you
couldn't
looked
start
at the
putting a new
contract, I mean,
field?
they're able to do work
Yeah.
on that field at their expense without any approval from us.
That's correct.
Yeah. I
That,
mean,
that's the
that's what it
basic
says.
lease back
Right.
with the, with,
Okay.
Cotters, not with the,
Just making sure that by saying that we're not comfortable with this particular cost sharing mechanism, that's not the end all be all of the
yeah,
agreement.
because we,
That's
the basic leases, they can do the field improvements.
Okay. Yeah, so, okay, long as that's out there and as long as work can proceed and we can continue to look at how much the city can comfortably, you know, cover of the field, I think then we're.
Mrs. Katz, you had your hand up.
Yes, you know, I think we all have to understand that there are some events that we hold in the city that are not going to make money for the city. It's the quality that we do for our citizens, and the MLB game, the Classic, has been one that has brought a lot of exposure. And as everybody has stated, with the kids in our city and our county that have got to at least for the first time probably in ever meet a pro baseball player. I mean, it's exciting to everybody. And, you know, when it's time for the tickets and everything, so many people want the tickets. And, you know, I think we all understand that Bowman Field is our treasure. It's one of our treasures in this city. And yes, we are responsible for not some, but quite a bit of a maintenance with the field. You know, my biggest problem is this was done, this money to do the field came on us towards the end of the year, when we are still trying to figure out where our budget is going. And we have to be so careful with where we go with spending because of our taxpayers. You know, not everybody is a baseball fan, and, you know, it is what it is. I mean, we all get excited when this game is coming about, because we know what the repercussions that happen with it. Everybody is, you know, for weeks ahead of time want this game. But, you know, we have to also keep in mind what we are doing to our taxpayers. You know, this is a lot of money. And like I said, we were given this and handed this to us approximately 3 weeks ago. And, it just makes you feel uncomfortable because you're trying to figure out where to go to get the money. I mean, yes, Act 13 was put into play, but Act 13 has been used mostly for our infrastructure of the city and, other projects. And, I just don't want to, jump on this right away, but I mean, maybe we can figure something else out. But just keep in mind, this is $190,000, and that's a lot of money for, to put on our taxpayers at this point. And that's where I'm coming from, not the MLB Classic to begin with. I mean, it's a wonderful thing that has happened, but it's the money. It always boils down to the money. And there are times that I always say, money could be what you want or your need. Is this a want or a need? And I think that's what we have to look at.
Any other comments or questions before we
I
vote
just-
about moving the
Just,
table? Mr.
just
Allison?
one, just one on the timing. And Mr. Livermore, you could probably confirm this. It needs to get, the project needs to start mid-September in order for the field to be ready in early spring and possibly even if it wasn't done in the right sequence, it could possibly affect the crosscutters opening.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't want to speak for can crosscutters, so,
right.
yeah, they are ready to go now and to make sure they stay within their timeline of getting.
Right. So I think that's maybe why we're seeing things start to roll because they either.
If the equipment is there, Scott, that means that they're probably going to start.
I guess
You can't speak for.
either that
I can't speak, okay.
or drive away.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions from members?
Just
Mr.
one more, if
Pelosi.
I may. Regardless of how this comes off, or if it's removed from the table, if it's not removed from the table, regardless, I would hope that MLB knows that we certainly appreciate the relationship that we currently have with them, but we are doing what we feel is in the best interest to protect our taxpayers, to protect our city, to make sure we do our due diligence first and foremost. And there is one thing, regardless of how this vote goes on this, I am very confident in, and that is that I am confident that MLB is going to come down and sit down at the table with us and make a very good effort, no matter how long that lasts, to come up with something that's mutually and amicably beneficial for us, them, and all parties involved.
Thanks, Mr. Pelosi. Okay, just to clarify, a no vote leaves it on the table. Yes vote removes it from the table. We can have further discussion about that from that point. Mrs. Franklin, the vote to remove from the table.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
No.
Mr. Pelisi,
No.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Say that again.
Voting no leaves it on the table. Voting yes removes it from the table, but it's not approving it either way.
No,
Mr. Yoder,
No, motion stays on the table 4-3. I believe that was the right count, right? What's that, 5-2?
4-3.
Yeah, it was 4-3, yeah.
4-3.
You voted yes, Biter voted yes.
4-3.
Allison voted yes. Yep. All right, thank you all. Good discussion, good points. We'll keep working on it. All right, let's go to item 5. I don't think anybody else is here, so we'll go down through order here. Item 5, Mrs. Frank.
ARPA transfer ordinance number 8.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mayor Slaughter, welcome. forward.
Yes.
How's-
Good evening, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council administration. And to clarify, is this the one we combined? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is the
Yep,
one we
this is
combined.
the combined ARPA
Okay.
transfer ordinance.
Got
That's
it.
correct.
All right, so I only have the one up, so remind me of,
Yeah, so in front of us, we're pulling $18,000 from Brandon Park Ball Fields, $18,000 from to put the court reconstruction,
Yep.
$69,000 from the RDA
Yep.
to go as into
To
Lowe's
Lowe's.
Park.
Yep, got it.
Yep.
Okay. I want to make sure that's what,
Yep, no
that was
worries.
looking at the right one.
Understood.
So yeah, so Brandon Park came in a little bit under, which was a good thing. Lowe's came in a little bit over. And so that's the transfer ordinance that is before you for your consideration. And for the court reconstruction, again, that came in, that's a little under, or excuse me, a little over, which is what we're transferring to. This was reviewed in
Public Works.
Public Works. Thank you.
No, you're welcome, sir. Mrs. Katz, reviewed in Public Works.
Yes, we discussed this briefly, and I think it's, we understand where this is all coming from, and we're so used to these transfers. We were just very happy that we did have one that came under
Mhm.
with Brandon Park, which was really kind of interesting. Happy about that. And the overage with the courts, it is what it is. We know that's the supplies at times. We're being hit with that more and more at this point. So we can all understand that. So that was our discussion.
Yeah, and it all stays in recreation. So
Mhm.
essentially just moving around the ARPA recreation budget.
Any comments or questions, Ms. Mealy?
What was the 70,000 that we went over budget, Liz?
That's Lowe's. It was materials and things just increased and
Okay, so we were initially at a $500,000 budget there, right?
yeah, I think it was 500,000-ish. DCNR, CDBG.
Yeah, no, I remember, but that's just a substantial, I mean, it's like a 15% increase.
The supplies, though.
Yeah.
15% over.
But didn't we get a bid and everything?
We did, yeah.
Okay. I guess, I mean, right, and I actually thought
We
we
didn't
were
get any
more,
change orders or anything, did we?
no,
I don't have any.
I guess I'm just a little confused. That seems like a pretty substantial amount of money to be over if we got a bid. And Skip, I mean, were you?
There was the unforeseen additional work that was required, and also the price of materials went up substantially. As the project was evolving, John and myself were involved. It came out at the end of the day that we were putting that proverbial rock on our place. Blame me if we should have brought it back to council for some of those changes. First time I've done a major project here, so it's in the city, I made a mistake.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that was what was stuck out to me whenever you said that was, I don't remember getting any change orders or approving any changes to the contract. Right?
That sort of stuff does usually come back to
Yep.
council if we're doing any kind of like,
Yeah.
change to the scope of the project. Just so that we're not surprised at the end of the day by a price tag that, and it's not, I mean, it maybe is more of a notification process than anything. If there's what was the change order? What was the big thing that surprised everybody?
Price of asphalt, price of the materials for the playground equipment went up.
Okay.
Price for that soft surface that went in, that went up from where it was originally bid. And until we got to the project itself, when this project was put together, we're going back, the funding was put in place between CDBG and DCNR. It was 2 years before we actually got the construction, so we wound up with that. Okay, 70,000.
Got it. I guess, so then the follow-up question for that is, maybe I thought when we got a bid, that was a firm number.
Sure.
Language in the agreement to allow that flexibility to increase.
Okay.
Cost increases.
Got it. Okay. I mean, if there was like, no, I mean, that totally happens. I mean, there are estimates, there are bids, there are things that are based on the price of materials, like every agreement is different. And so you're telling me that in this agreement, we had allowed them leeway, because usually what happens is when we
Traditionally,
accept it-
that happens through a change order process.
Right. Well, and when we accept a bid, the person has quoted us a price predicated on the market price at the moment. They go out, secure those items, and then those items come to us at the price that they've been guaranteed at in the bid. Right. So I guess I'm just a little bit confused as to how, I mean, because it'd be one, I mean, right. 18 grand is 18 grand on a $770,000 project is not that remarkable. But 70 grand on a $500,000 is a bigger deal. But is a much bigger gap. Anyway, yeah, I think certainly in future, notice that something like this had happened prior to the project being over and done with would be helpful. You said there were additional costs and materials, but there was some additional work that had to be done?
So.
When they started, we looked at sidewalks, some of the sidewalks had been undermined. The ground and the surface of the existing sidewalk had washed away over time or sank over time. And so.
Got it. So we had to
go
do,
in and redo some of the sidewalks were never expected to be touched.
got it. Yeah, that would definitely, I think, fall into the description of a change order, even if the change in pricing did.
Yeah.
But any additional work that we put on the vendor should come in. Yeah, anyway, and I assume I am not today remembering where ARPA funding is and is not, but we no longer have any additional unallocated funding within the recreation budget.
Yeah, I think we do. Yeah.
Shouldn't we take it out of that then instead of the redevelopment authority?
But we
That
could,
was part of my
Yeah.
question, just in general, what's going on with the RDA, because from what I can tell, I haven't seen an updated budget, like what's been drawn down from that this quarter.
Yep.
Okay, I know we're tracking that, but I don't know that there's much going on there, and that's starting to concern me because that's been sitting there for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And we've only got about a year at this point to move that around if they're not going to use it.
yeah, so the RDA and Land Bank, one and the same, really, just approved their subrecipient agreement 2 weeks ago. Yeah, so that did take a little bit of time back and forth with the RDA, their attorneys. So the subrecipient agreement to accept the funds was approved, reviewed on our side. And Tracy and I talked about that today, actually. So
Okay.
that should be getting over to the RDA Land Bank. Right now, I think the RDA is at about 1.2 million. And I think the Land Bank's at about 1 million.
Yeah.
So as soon as that gets into their accounts, listening to the RDA, I don't want to speak for them, obviously, but I think it's going to get spent pretty quickly.
Okay.
They have some different projects they're lined up. They're looking forward to doing
Good,
home rehabs, acquisitions, potentially things of that nature.
good. Okay.
So I think there's 7 or 8 properties, something in that vicinity, that go from blighted to the RDA.
Okay.
So,
Good. That's good to hear.
and I can't speak too closely to Lowe's. I apologize for that. John was,
Yeah.
so my apologies. I
No
wasn't
worries.
aware of that.
Yeah.
I would like clarity from somebody in the administration, just like, I mean, if there was language in the contract that we approved that says, yeah, they can, just do ads without approvals.
Yeah.
I mean, that's on us, okay? I don't remember seeing that, but I mean, it's also been a while,
Yeah,
okay?
we can get that
Um,
to you, sure.
But if it's there and there, I mean, I would just like clarity on what the
Sure.
mechanism was, so we make sure that we're not repeating that, because that really puts us in a position for future contracts to let
Yeah.
other projects just run up
I-
to where there's no,
Right. I wholeheartedly agree.
yep, so.
I was blindsided by this.
Miss Mealy.
Well, however, to Tracy's little huff of course, it goes up. It is true that for some reason government is a different deal from like, if I get a quote for my sidewalk or something like that, then I anticipate that is what I pay. When all
sure.
is said and done. And for whatever reason, that does not, there are often codicils in the contracts that we agree to
Sure,
that allow for extraordinary circumstances and or allow for increase in material costs. And it does seem as though, right,
sure.
when you let the contract, you say, okay, you go out, you acquire the materials, like this is the price you gave us and that's it. But yeah.
Sure, and let me be clear, I'm not questioning the changes as
Mhm.
far as like the need for the changes. I get it. Absolutely. It makes perfect sense to me. I just would like clarity on the mechanism of how they were approved and everything. I mean,
And if we can.
when I worked in contracting for 10 years, I worked with all kinds of municipal level governments.
Mhm.
I never had a contract where I didn't have to go get a change order.
Mhm.
And so I mean, maybe that's a new thing, but it's weird to me.
No.
And
there
so
should
if,
definitely have been a
if it was
change.
in there, we should
Right.
be sure that we catch that in the future. And I think from our legal team's perspective, we don't want that.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, that's fine, right.
I'd like to see that in the contract.
Yeah,
I would like to see
they're gonna check on that for us
Yeah.
before second reading
Yeah.
preferably. Yeah, and thank you for that. Any other comments or questions on this? Sorry for the rabbit hole here. Miss Mealy has another one.
Well, I guess actually the only point that I was gonna finish up with then is that if there is money in the recreation, unallocated funds in the recreation line, I would perhaps prefer to see them come from there at this moment, because to the best of my knowledge, we also don't have, I mean, not that we can't find,
Sure.
recreation needs within the city, but it seems like if we currently have unallocated funding within the recreation element of the ARPA budget, we should take the Los Park funding from there
Yeah.
and then look at the redevelopment authority or other economic development funds if we have something larger that we're looking to pursue that's less of a nickel and dime. Not that this is nickel and dime, as I just said, but
Sure.
less of one.
So we could do one of two things. I mean, we could table this in first reading, or we could pass it with the expectation to make those changes in second reading. Because I know the administration is already going to give us some additional information on the contractual mechanism that we talked about.
Right.
I'm sure Mayor Slaughter, Tracy could quantify like where and how much between now and second reading, if members of council are comfortable with that. So I would be, but
So I guess, well, let's just maybe perhaps take a general temperature as long as I'm comfortable passing it in
Yeah.
first reading. Pending that change in second reading.
Yeah.
For the source of the funds, but
Mhm.
if other people don't agree with me and would like to see it come out of the redevelopment authority, then by all means, speak now. Or hold your peace for 2 weeks. I don't want to have to discuss it on the 28th if we can avoid it, guys.
I prefer your course of action this way. I see a few nodding heads, so I think the
Okay.
consensus is probably that.
Okay, so then can you guys give us an amended version that we can simply substitute at the next meeting? There, you said there's capacity in that line. I thought there was. I thought we had a couple 100,000 yet in the recreation slush fund, so to speak. So. And just to reiterate, John, it doesn't mean I'm committed to having it in economic development. I'm just saying we might as well leave it, take it out of recreation as long as we started in recreation.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole. Come on.
Just means we can fight about it some other time.
Hear, hear. Any other comments or questions from members on the first reading? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on first reading for item 5.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes,
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We'll go to item 6, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance, transfer ordinance number 5 in first reading.
Is there a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion in a second. Mayor Slaughter.
Good evening again, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council administration. What you have before you is an ordinance, transfer ordinance number 5. This would be for rent reallocation. There was discussion during budget last year to potentially look at Third Street Plaza or other places, which we did explore. Of course, in 2 weeks, we'll be having a conversation. But this is to reallocate so that we can cover the rent expenses currently. And this was reviewed in
Finance, I think, right?
finance. Okay.
Yeah. Ms. Mealy, finance.
Yes, reviewed in finance with no major discussion. This is money that, to my semi recollection, because I'm not remembering much this week, and to assurances from the administration, we put in legislative contingency in case we needed to bring it back out for rent. So here it comes. And I think the one discussion that we had between this item and an item that's no longer on our agenda tonight, but will be on the 28th, the sale agreement with J Boss Realty. We do need to make some definitive steps to figuring out what our plans are. Obviously, we also need to continue to pay rent for the remainder of the year, and there's not really any debate about that. And we will definitely I will definitely be voting to transfer the monies. But that doesn't remove the necessity of us making other plans in the long term, which I think was the goal of initially making the rent cutoff September when we did it in the budget. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions from other members? Okay, here you can see now Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 6.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes,
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We will move to item 7.
Resolution accepting donations from the UPMC Health Plan.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second, Mayor Slaughter.
Yes, good evening once again, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council administration. What you have before you is a resolution to accept a donation from the UPMC Health Plan in the amount of $10,000. This sponsorship was for Shaw Park, the resurfacing of the walking, biking path that's out there, and the parking lot next to the basketball court. And along with it, UPMC Health Plan has said they would work with our streets and parks. They have a QR code if you walked a quarter mile, half mile, 3/4 mile, mile, etc. They have some swag bags and things that they give out based off of your exercise. And so it's obviously right in the backyard of Divine Providence, UPMC Divine. And so that's why it made a lot of sense for them. And they have, I don't want to speak for UPMC Health Plan. I don't think Tina could make it tonight. She was here on Tuesday. But they have hinted towards some future possible contributions as well to continue our partnership between UPMC and the city. So obviously, we're very grateful for this contribution, very similar to the one the Air Force did for the courts. This one allowed us to repave Shaw Park. So we appreciate that. And again, Mr. Black, I don't think Tina's not on tonight, is she? I don't believe she could make it this evening, but she was here Tuesday and she shared her excitement for partnering with us. And to be clear, this is the UPMC Health Plan, which is clearly still part of UPMC, but this is the health plan section of UPMC. And this was reviewed in Public Works.
Yes. Mrs. Katz, Public Works.
yes, we were really excited to talk to Tina about this, and anything that you can do to bring people outside is fantastic. And being that, you have the splash pad and everything else in that area, this is going to be very beneficial. I also talked to her about doing the Heart Walk downtown to revitalize that, which is a measured mile. And the way she talked, they're going to do a measured mile around Shaw. And to have these measured miles for people is something that's really beneficial to everybody. And for them to also do the sidewalks, that takes the pressure off of us, because that was one thing that we did discuss when we were putting the splash pad in about some of the sidewalks. So this came at a very good time. It really did. I didn't ask, when are they planning on starting this?
They actually, Scott and his team, they did. So UPMC Health Plan just did a contribution. They gave it to us. So this is
So-
more like a formality.
So
they
then
said
we're
they would
going to
take
take care of getting,
Yeah, we
Oh.
repaved it. If you remember, we bought the paver
Right,
earlier.
right.
Council approved the new
right,
alley trail paver. So
it's
so it
done.
looks great out there. Yeah, if you go take a look, it's,
Fantastic.
yeah,
Okay,
so UPMC gave us the money.
fantastic. That's all. Just a great thing that they've done. It's not every day that somebody gives you $10,000.
And all work was done in-house. Our streets and parks folks did a great job.
I don't know if anybody else on the committee has anything to say.
Any other comments from members of council? Ms. Mealy.
Just a quick, we don't need any further sort of agreement to accept the funds and a resolution.
According to Austin, I talked to Austin, he said just a resolution to accept.
I mean, given that the work is done.
Yeah.
That seems to be a little less complicated, but I'm still like, there's not. I'm just trying to think, nothing related to ongoing maintenance or anything like that, that we would, right now.
No, yeah.
Take the money and run.
Yeah, they didn't want
Oh,
to
yeah.
commit to like ongoing maintenance or anything like that.
So they're giving us money. It's-
Yeah. We
own
were
it.
going to
It's
do
on
it
us to
either
maintain
way,
it,
most
right?
likely.
Hence why
yeah.
it's pretty,
Yeah.
yeah, resolution's good. There's no
Right.
contract, so there's no.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
assuming,
no,
right?
no. Yeah, it was they're just gonna say like, they want to put a QR to encourage healthy living. But again, our streets and parks are gonna do all that. So,
All right, good.
10,000 is enough.
yeah, it was, they did all the whole trail and everything.
No
Yeah.
overage, nowhere else we need to dip into.
Well, if we did the walk ourselves, then.
Yeah.
I'm assuming so, just.
Yeah, I mean, for material.
We ran into that earlier tonight on a transfer ordinance, so I mean, just.
That was all our
I
own.
figured I would just ask.
Yeah,
Yeah. This
We're
was
good.
all our own work. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I was
Okay.
gonna say, so basically they're covering materials, we're covering labor on it, right?
Cool. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Here you see none. Mrs. Franklin, the motion, please, for item 7.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes,
Mrs. Katz.
Yes,
Mr. Yoder,
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 9, Gary, I talked to Gary, he's still working through some stuff. He asked that we leave this on the table. And he'll bring it forward, I think sometime in October. So I'll ask for a motion, a second to remove from the table, not getting one, just leaves it there. Okay. Well, leave it on the table. We'll move to item 11, Mrs. Frank.
resolution authorizing purchase of a 2023 JCB 857-20 tail swing excavator.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Livermore, good evening, sir.
Good evening, members of council. What I bring to you tonight is a resolution authorizing the purchase of 2023 JCB 85 excavator. So what this is, what I'm getting this piece of equipment for is Graphius run. Obviously, a lot of you guys know that one of the runs at the church has a machine that is quite old and is in dire need some updates. Not too long ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, we had a high water event, got called in about 2 a.m. I went out with my operator. Long story short, we had some mechanical failures on the green machine, so luckily we had the other piece there to get over there to assist to make sure nothing came over that evening. So that prompted me to, we had to make a change on this in this area. So I want to take out the green machine and put in a reliable piece of equipment that's brand new, so we don't have any issues like this, any failures. It's $115,886.45. It's coming out of the Graphius Runs account. It was put in the budget for last year. Here in October, we are putting in sensors at the church and at the school. And then a little bit further up from that, there's another set of sensors going in to help alarm us to when high water events actually happen. So we have more time to react and get out there to clean them off. This was reviewed in Public Works. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Katz, Public Works.
yes, we didn't ask, did this go through Austin?
Yes.
Okay, and co-stars?
Pardon me?
And co-stars?
Yeah, this is a CoStarz. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
just, I forgot to ask that at the meeting. You explained this equipment and maybe we should call the new one a different color instead of the, like we called the old one, the green machine.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but as you said, can't even get parts anymore and it served us well for how many decades?
Yeah, it's kind of a landmark, I guess, now at this point
We
in time.
were saying we should
Uh,
put it in the museum or something. You know,
We could. I know it's been there. My guys, some of my guys have been there for 40 years and it was used when we bought it back then. So, and it's time to make a change. Obviously, the new one now, that was more of a stationary one. The one I want to get now is more of a mobile. We could utilize it for anything in town. If something happens, we can always take it back. I can move up the stream to clean any debris out. It's just not stationary. So this is kind of a, kill two birds with
more
one stone.
useful, more useful all
Yep.
the way around. That's all I have to say. I don't know, if Vince knew more about this equipment than anybody.
I guess I'm on the spot. Yeah, I just wanted, For the record, I wanted, but also for the record, my wife would certainly not approve. But yeah, to Mr. Livermore's point, it was old back then when they installed it. But also, it would really be a shame to see that thing scrapped or junked.
I don't think we'll do that. I think we'll do something with it.
I would love to see it be implemented as part of, the landscape or out in front of one of our buildings, paying homage to the history of it.
When you go on vacation.
Yeah. You're welcome to put it in my front yard.
I'm sure your wife will.
You'll have to deal with her.
I love that.
Good luck, Selena.
Yeah. I'll paint it whatever color she wants.
Oh, it's gotta stay green. Come on.
No more. I have no more statement.
Thank you, Mr. Pelisi.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions, Ms. Mealy?
How much do we have in the Graphius run line item in the general fund?
I believe there's 300,000 in there.
Okay, so this will take us down to, I don't know, 185, something like that.
Yeah, and the sensors will be going in October. They're at 157.
Got it. So we're about emptying out the
Yep.
Graphius run line item, which takes us down to that emergency and reserve fund. Adam, I guess the one follow-up question I have is obviously, we haven't budgeted this in any sort of, we're not budgeting the replacement for this item. Do we have any idea what the lifetime is?
I should retire. 20 years. It should be a while. I mean, it's not a piece of equipment we're gonna run hard in the dirt every day.
Right.
Obviously, it'll sit out there for most of its life, but gives us the ability to pull it off and use it elsewhere in the city.
Got it,
So
got it.
quite a while.
Okay. Yeah, just asking if we should be looking at putting any sort of money for its replacement into anything, including Graphius run, including that line item so that we know that we can replace it. But if you think we've got at least 25 years on it or something like that, then.
Yeah,
okay.
Easy, yeah.
Then that's their problem, right? That's what they did to us.
That's their problem.
I guess the one other follow-up question I had, and I know we find ourselves in a bit of a place in particular engineer-wise right now. But I remember some conversations around Graphius Run where we sort of discussed the possibility for creating ponding areas in the city and looking at other work within the city that would allow us to control the flow of Graphius Run more effectively, smaller projects. Because it seems to me that my understanding was there was grant funding out there for some of that work if we started moving on it. And I don't know if we know how long that grant funding will be out there. So anyway, I would say, and perhaps the Public Works Committee could drive this, Bonnie, moving forward, that we should be having conversations about commissioning, some of the kind of smaller, low-hanging projects that might give us some capacity in the city to absorb overflow on Graphius.
So I'm in communication right now with Tom Keller with potential brick grant for the trash racks. Right now it's all still out front, but it's being talked about right now. It's anywhere for both of them to do is $2 to $2.4 million to do both. For the trash racks we were talking about back in April, I think at that time.
Right.
But the conversations are happening right now. So
Got it.
Yep.
Well, I guess I think a lot of communities, like I know I've walked through like flood containment areas in Austin, right? Where they get like heavy water some parts of the year, then it's totally dry other parts of the year. Anyway, there are just a bunch of different strategies we could implement that together would allow us to control Graphius Run better within the city. I think that we should be in conversations, not just with Keller, but maybe with
Delta.
Delta
At the state.
and
WSP.
WSP.
Yep.
It's like wood, it's not wood anymore.
Yeah.
WSP, just to look at what some of those projects, what shape some of those projects might take, because it's not just trash racks, like there are others.
Oh, yeah.
You can like turn a city street into a potential overflow area and put a mechanism in place to close the street so that it can contain water, right? It's all earth moving stuff, but it's not quite some of the big work we were talking about north of the city for a while. It's smaller projects in the city that are easier to fund and that we can accomplish some of without accomplishing all of them. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, no, I think conversations with Keller about trash racks are awesome. I just think that we need to be maybe in a committee setting, looking at conversations about all of it and what we can be doing and look for the low hanging fruit. You know, maybe Tom Keller says, okay, we can't get money for trash racks. Oh, but we could totally get it for green space. So can we put in a green space ponding area, right? And go from there. So anyway.
That was one of the things that John was constantly doing. He was constantly looking for the funding for these projects and also constantly in touch with Keller for what can be done with so many different areas. And I know it's a lot on your plate to do this, but we don't know everything that John left us with for any openings for things that he was looking for, you know, funding. Hopefully you're coming across some of these projects again, because he was constantly doing things constantly. We do have him and that we can get in touch with when we do need him. So it's, you know, to see what he was doing. But you're right, we have to keep on it. And that's been my thing all along. We've got to make sure that our lobbyists are out there constantly looking for things. The loudest voices sometimes bring us the most money. And we have to push them constantly.
Well, lucky for him, I still got his phone number, so.
Okay, that's good.
Well, and I'm not even necessarily putting it on Jim Scott. I'm just saying if we try to keep it as something that we're discussing in committee on a fairly regular basis, it keeps it in the forefront of our minds.
does,
It keeps
yeah.
it in the forefront of their minds. So it's not me trying to say that you need to be the engineer and run the streets and parks department. I'm just trying to make sure we keep working out of it. And I'm not dumping it on you either, Bonnie. It's just more appropriate for you than for finance, you know?
Oh, I know, I know.
Any
We'll
other,
go to Scott.
any other comments or questions on item 11? Mr. Mackey?
Just, I mean, Scott, I know it's part of your job description, but thank you for being out there at 2 o'clock in the morning and making sure that our residents don't get flooded. So thank you for that.
It's the worst feeling in the world when you're looking at a video and you're 10 minutes away. So,
Well, as you said, the sensors are going to help you get some sleep.
oh, yeah, can't wait.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 11, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes,
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Scott. We'll move to item 12, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution to appoint a section 504 compliance officer and establish a grievance procedure.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Skip, welcome. Good evening.
Good evening, President Yoder, members of council. We're bringing this resolution to you this evening because we had brought it to you about 6 months ago, and John Sander had filled in that role. Since his departure, I'm going to fill that role as the 504 compliance officer. So that if anyone has an issue relevant to ADA accessibility with CDBG projects, et cetera, it would come to my desk, and then we'll resolve the grievance along with CEDACOG. It's part of the procedures that are required under the HUD resolution. And I'm here to answer any questions. This was reviewed, I believe, in public safety.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mackey, Public Safety.
Yeah, it was. There was not a whole lot of conversation. I mean, as Skip said, he's basically filling the role that John Sander would have played. And since there's no John Sander anymore, we now have Skip. So. Yeah, I mean, I'll open it up to anybody else.
Any other comments or questions from members of council? Yeah, Mr. Bider.
Before Mr. Sanders had left, was there anything that was brought to his attention that we should?
No. And we had the first public hearing for the 2024 action plan this morning, and no one made any comments around ADA compliance or any of the issues that we've done in the past couple of years.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 12, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank
Skip.
you.
We'll move to item 13, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing the purchase of internet services through River Valley Internet.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Chris Black, good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening, Council President Yoder and other members of council. What this is resolution for a contract with River Valley Internet to provide internet service up at Newbury Park. This would be to provide us a feed for the cameras that we're installing there back to us. Installation fee is $150 and recurring monthly charge of $70 per month. This is the same that we put into Shaw Park. This will come out of my contracted services.
Okay. This was reviewed in finance, Ms. Mealy.
This was reviewed in finance, I actually think that Bonnie might have asked the most pertinent question related to exactly how much money Chris had out in contract services through his department. You said 36,000 a year, I believe. Chris?
Roughly before this,
Okay.
35 and change.
Right. So this is 3570 now.
Yeah, 35K.
No, sorry. We're looking at it for the entire year. So more like 38, 39. But anyway, but yeah, it's, this is that, obviously we're primarily, taking internet service to the parks so that we can keep a better eye on the parks.
Yeah.
But that said, I actually did, for whatever reason, get feedback on the fact that we'd installed not just internet, but Wi-Fi at Shaw Place. And apparently that is not in the offing for Newbury Park necessarily, merely because I think you said, Chris, that the equipment has to be.
Well, Shaw Place was to be manned,
Mhm.
whereas Newbury is not. There's not going to be someone from recreation up there.
Right.
Big difference.
But you said we can't do Wi-Fi throughout the park.
I don't have any
because-
place where I can feasibly securely put one without it getting hit with something or vandalized.
Got it. And Shaw Place is not manned at this point?
It's inside the building,
Oh, yeah, okay.
the old pool house.
Yeah, no, I understand, but I thought you said it was to be manned.
No. It was during the summer when
okay, right.
Shaw, when Splash Pad was open,
Right.
they had people there.
Right. Okay. Okay, never mind.
So it was manned over the summer, but now it's not because the season's
Right,
over, is
right,
what
right.
you're saying.
But
Correct.
the equipment's secure anyway, so.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, inside the, right, and the equipment's secure at Newbury as well,
Yes.
right? So,
They just refurbished the building, new roof.
right. Good. But anyway. Yes, I think that was the only major question. And just to be clear, the 36, potentially as much as 38 or 39 with this, out of Chris's budget does not include all the various and sundry ongoing expenses within the police department, the finance department.
Correct.
Et cetera, et cetera. We're investing a lot more than that in ongoing contracts for service and or software, et cetera. But directly through IT, it's sub 40,000 yet for all of our requirements there. Thanks, Chris.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions from other members? Okay. Here you can see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 13.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes
Thank you.
7-0. Thank you, Chris. We'll move to item 14, except for filing. We have a finance committee meeting minutes from June 20th, 2023. Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the meeting minutes? Hearing seen none. Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 14.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 15, announcements. Our next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be in 2 weeks, Thursday, September 28th, 7 p.m. Upcoming meetings. Tuesday, September 19th at 6:30 p.m. is Historic Architectural Review Board. Wednesday, September 20th, 10 a.m. is Blighted Property. Thursday, September 21st, 10:30 a.m. Zoning Hearing Board. Tuesday, September 26th, 11:30 a.m. Public Safety. 1:30 p.m. Finance, 2:30 p.m. Public Works. Wednesday, September 27th, 9 a.m. is Economic Revitalization. 11:30 a.m. is Redevelopment Authority. Thursday, September 28th, 7 p.m. is our next city council meeting. Are there any comments from members of city council? Mr. Pelisi?
Thank you very much. I would just make a comment to the public and any and all those watching and listening. I think all of our community, local community, regional community was aware of what happened to the young man that plays football up at Jersey Shore. I would just hope that everyone keeps him and his family members in their thoughts and prayers at this time. It's everything that I understand. It's a very difficult and trying time for the community and especially for the family. So I would just ask that everybody does that. Thank you.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes, I think we all watched the escaped convict that was captured yesterday, and it was a canine that really went into action. And that brings up the point of our canine units. Our canine officers, when I first brought this up with Chief Hagan, my objective was that this was always going to be run by donations and no line items. And for the public, remember how important these canine officers are. And please, we're asking for any donations that you will give to the canine unit.
If I might add to that real quick, for anyone that didn't know, that canine's name was Yoda. So just to let certain people know that I know would appreciate hearing that.
That's a great name. Any other comments or questions from members of, or excuse me, any other comments from members of council? Any comments from the administration tonight? Any comments from members of the public tonight? Come up, state your name and address for the record. And you have 3 minutes.
My name is Frank Steckel, 619 First Avenue. I came here to ask questions about the City Hall sale, but when you got on the Little League, I had to say something about that. It kind of reminds me, if you don't mind the comparison, it's sort of like the stock says to the seed, what have you done? What have you contributed? You know, we're Little League. 3/4 of the people that watch Major League Baseball were Little League first. I think literally I have here, they owe us a debt of gratitude. I don't know what $200,000 is to the city budget or but I do know that, can you imagine the scourge on Major League Baseball, which they don't have to react to anybody for much of anything, if they were to deny us this game, okay? And the only thing bigger than Major League Baseball, and they will admit it and they show it in their actions, is public opinion. So when you guys go to deal with them, you know, try to keep that in mind. It's not boss hog, big business is going to tell us what to do. It's the public opinion of not only the country, but the world that's going to dictate what gets done. That's all I have to say on that. But the Graffius Run, you know, at one time I had to go up and look for a property. The city actually considers the properties below that in that drain field, I guess you would call it, to be in the floodplain. I don't know what the difference is between that and the floodplain like on Old Lake Cumming, where you have to have insurance for it. But it was in the paperwork. They wouldn't let me take a copy with me to show the person that they couldn't believe it was considered floodplain. Must be different degrees of floodplain, but I think a machine there is obviously needed. I also quickly, you're talking about the hound, the dogs finding that guy. They also used heat sensitive equipment to find him, which I don't even know if the Williamsport Police Department has that kind of equipment to find people in the woods, you know, through heat detection. Now on the city thing, you know, I'm following as best I can through the paper, but really the city, if they want the public to be informed, should put together a city generated document showing how much they're paying in rent right now, how much the one bidder, we all know, I think it was $5 million or something like that, to fix it. I usually government gets more than one bid. I think 2 or 3 are required by law. I know they cost money, I believe, to pay for the bid. But you know, these things are are things that everybody should know so that they can look at this, because frankly, a lot of people don't trust this whole thing. They look at it as somebody's trying to line their pockets. Myself, there's an old term called central government. It's kind of goes back a few, like maybe to the Greek, to the Egyptians, perhaps Sumerians, Babylonians had a central government, not a government scattered all over the place. I'm not sure. I know in my own experience, it's not working well at all. I do construction and I have to deal with codes. It's very difficult. I also know that Mr. Girardi was one of the most knowledgeable people, has more years than almost probably anybody in the whole quagmire. And I don't see his opinion being mentioned. And he was in favor of keeping City Hall. I don't know how much it would cost to build a new City Hall. I don't know these things. And it shouldn't be left to the newspaper, because when you read the newspaper, they're not required to be accurate or forthcoming. And actually, sometimes it's very confusing when you read them, try to understand what's going on. The city government has responsibility to the public to put this all down in documentation, put it in the newspaper if necessary, make it available so people can actually see what this controversy boils down to.
Thank you.
If you're going to build another one, I'd like to know where you're going to build it. You know, I mean, but
Thank you,
really,
sir.
yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Any other comments from the public? Any comments from the news media? I don't think any of them are here anyway. I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you all. Meeting adjourned.